There we go. Welcome. We're going to talk today about how do you find the customer's true problem. So I'm going to give you 5 things that I think will be helpful, whether you're brand new in sales or whether you're a seasoned veteran who has been in the business of professional selling for 40 years. Let's see, that would make you, it could be 40 years. I want to share with you some thoughts here today. We're going to go for about 15, 20 minutes. If you are on Facebook or YouTube, make sure you share this with your friends and like it if you care to. Also, I'll be taking comments too and questions from the group. So make sure that you put your comment in and I'll be answering questions either as we go or at the end. We do this every day and will be for the next 21 days, except for the weekend, probably 4 o'clock time frame each time. Maybe earlier on some days, but we're going to be talking about sales and selling. And my hope is that by doing these, you can start to reinvent yourself a little bit. I think with the disruption, there's a lot of uncertainty about what is sales. A lot of it's digital. You're not showing up on golf courses anymore. Well, it's winter, so you're probably not. But if you live in warm climates, maybe. But the whole idea of selling is really changed. And so I want to make sure that we are serving you during these next 21 days. Once again, like, share, put a comment in. If you have a question, I would be happy to take it. So why is this topic of understanding the customer's motive so important? Well, number one, I think it's because of closing percentages. Closing percentages are really low today. It may not be for you, but generally I'm looking at 15-ish% of deals that get proposed, gets closed. I think that's a massive waste of time for you. That means you're pursuing 85% of people who aren't doing business with you. And I know you'll say, well, but they could someday. Yeah, but I would rather have a filter. And that's what I'm going to give you today, a filter to check out to see if someone's truly a prospect or not. Because if they're not, I don't want you to waste another minute of time. Number two and a half is that I want you to be confident that when you first start talking to somebody as a potential client, that you, in your own process and your rules, you know whether they're going to become a client or not. This idea of moving people through the funnel and then they get to the end and your manager says, well, what's the percentage chance if we close this? Well, it's 70%. I don't think most of us really know what the hell that means. And so then the manager says to you, hey, where are we with the Smith deal? And you have to either make up a story or you really don't know where it is. You know there's a better chance than not it will close, but 70%, do you really know that? And so I want to give you some ideas today on how to do that. You know, when I started out in selling 150 years ago, I was pumped full of product knowledge. I worked for a Caterpillar dealer in Indianapolis called McAllister Machinery, still around. I had just gotten out of school. I was in the parts department as part of the training program. And then eventually I got a book that had all the prospects and clients in it for a specific region. They say, okay, Bill, your goal is $1 million. Have at it. Good luck. Go come back December 31st. Well, I had been so pumped full of product knowledge during that prior year. And we're selling bulldozers and graders and loaders and scrapers. And I had no idea what any of that was. I was a protected class. I didn't have any knowledge at all about torque and engine and transmission and horsepower and all that. So I was pumped full of product knowledge. Now, what do you think I did when I finally got into the field trying to sell people things? Well, all I did was regurgitate product knowledge. And you know what? Some of those people needed that. And I'm not opposed to product knowledge, but the problem was nobody ever taught me how to find out what the problem was, how to really understand the prospect circumstances and what the pain was. So I would go out and try to sell there was a D7. I don't know what it is now. It's a bulldozer. And the guy was using a 10-year-old bulldozer. And he'd say, well, I don't really need one. And I'd say, well, it's got this and it's got transmission, it's got hydraulics, and it's got all these things. They all had hydraulics. I made that up. But then he'd say, well, how much is it? And I'd say $200,000. And he would say, $200,000. Well, what do you give me for mine? 10-year-old model. I said, 30. He goes, 30, is that? And so we'd get into this long argument about pricing and trade-in. Well, the problem was not the cost of the machine or the trade-in value. The problem is I sucked at finding out what the compelling reason was this person would even have to trade or to get better. And sometimes they didn't have a reason, but if they did, I wasn't finding it. So I was frustrated about that, and I never really understood what was happening. I knew I didn't like the business. Probably if I'd have had some good training, I might still be in it. Who knows? We wouldn't be doing this Facebook and YouTube live. But anyway, here I am. So I struggled with that, and I understand sometimes in the sales process, it's hard to find what the true compelling reason is that the prospect would change. But we're going to change that today. I'm going to give you some tips and some ideas on how to do that. The first thing is that, the world has changed, as I said earlier, a lot of disruption. I think customers are going to be going to exhibit much more scrutiny in their purchases. And I'm speaking here primarily in the B2B space, although maybe some of you are in B2C, but regardless, there's going to be scrutiny. And so people are going to have to know, if I buy this thing, what's going to happen? Is my life going to be better or worse? It's a lot of money. How do I justify the expense? So you're going to find a lot of that over the next couple of years. My vision for you is really simple. I want you in this process to begin to transform your thinking from I sell them to they sell me. Almost said it wrong. I want you to transform your thinking from I sell to them to they sell to me. Now, why would they ever sell to you? Why would they ever be the ones that are pitching you? Well, it's because they have a massive problem. And your solution seems to fit the bill to solve that problem. If you don't find the problem, you're always going to be in the position of trying to convince and persuade them. I think you're better than that. I think it takes too long to do deals when it's that way. Whenever I hear people say, well, my average sale time is a year and a half, I think, well, you're just not doing a good job of finding the problem up front, irrespective of contracts and things like that. So I want to give you 5 pieces of advice today. If you have a question, make sure you put it in there. I'll be happy to answer it as we go. So here's number 1. First piece of advice. If you are going to understand what the customer's problem is, or pain, or whatever name you want to put on it, it's not need, it's deeper than that. The compelling reason the customer has to buy, you've got to understand what problems you solve. So I need you immediately, maybe not right now because you may be driving or may not have access to pencil and paper. I want you to start documenting what are the problems that your prospect has that you can solve. Now you're going to say, well, Bill, but I don't know what problems he or she has until I ask them. Fair enough. But you probably know generally what the problems are. If you're selling accounting services, what are the problems that crop up when someone's using another accountant? I worked with a pretty good size accounting firm, and they were just out there pitching. Actually, they weren't pitching because they're accountants. So they hated the prospect of selling. They didn't hate the prospect. They hated the prospect of selling and pitching. Once we help them see that, look, you're in sales to solve problems. You're not in sales to pitch and convince and persuade and present. That's not the role of the salesperson. The role of the salesperson is to find and solve problems. That's it. But if you can't create the environment where that happens, then you're going to be swimming upstream. One way to do that is to start documenting what problems does your product solve, or what problems do you solve as a sales professional or as an entrepreneur, whatever role you play. So here's an example of what not to do and how not to position this document I just asked you to do. Here's an example that I hear a lot. We help people by providing them state-of-the-art software so they can spend time doing what makes them money without worrying about software platforms. Well, that's a terrible list. That's not what you would say to a prospect. That's all about you. We're good. We provide platforms. This is about what you provide. Here's a better way to think about it. We get asked to help people solve 3 problems, A, B, and C, whatever those problems are. In the accounting business, it could sound something like this. We get asked in to engage with people who have 3 problems. Number 1, their current accountant is only doing taxes, and you only see them once a year, and we believe that you pay the penalty for that. Sometimes you might want to inquire about whether I purchase something or not, or whether I lease it or purchase it. So think about declaring the problem as a problem, not as a solution. So in my sales work, I call on VPs of sales a lot. And I would say to them, there's 3 problems that you as a VP of sales have. Number 1, your people are good, but they're not great. And you think there's upside potential, and you get frustrated because you look at them and say, do you know how good you have it here? You should be doing more. No, second problem is that a lot of the people on your team don't make calls. They don't make enough sales calls. They don't make enough cold calls or cold outreach. They're not good on social media. And so therefore, you're always battling the funnel. At the end of the month, you're always battling a weak or inactive funnel. Now, every salesperson, every sales leader on the planet has one of those 2 problems, and I've got 2 or 3 others that I share. I don't think you want to do more than 3, though. But think about what problems you solve. Write them down in the form of a problem, not in the form of a solution. That's really important, really important. It's hard to do. Check it out with one of your friends or neighbors or your spouse or partner or your manager. Say, look, are these the kinds of problems we solve? When you get good at that, man, your life is going to be so much better because the closing percentage is going to go up. The cycle time is going to go down because the prospect's going to say, yes, Philip, I have that problem. I got told last week I was yelling into the microphone. So hopefully I'm not peaking on this. All right. So that's number 1. Make a list of the problems. How are you going to find a problem if you don't know what the problems are you fix? Now, you can also expand this a little bit, talk about goals. What kind of goals are they interested in? But let's focus on problems for the time being. Second thing I want you to do, I'm going to put something up here. Do you see that? That's a mega bus. I used to call it the magic bus, and my family used to get mad at me. What is the mega bus? The mega bus is a transport vehicle. The mega bus takes people from one place to another, from Indianapolis to Chicago, from Chicago to Toledo, whatever. There is a destination that bus has. I think your transport vehicle to help them get from where they are to where they want to be, your transport vehicle is not a bus, although it might be. It's a sales process. That's your transport vehicle. That helps them go from point A to point Z, and you do it by understanding that there is a process that they go through. They become aware of their problem. They comprehend the importance of it. They seek somebody out to solve it. You share how you solve those problems. So you have provided a transport vehicle for them to get to their destination. Now, one thing about a megabus, almost said magic bus again. One thing about a megabus, when it pulls into the station, you know exactly where it's going. Why? Because of that little thing on top. The little thing on top of the front of the bus says destination. You've got to have a destination. The destination is not the sale. That's only step 1 of the destination. The destination is, what are you going to help them accomplish by solving the problems that you solve? That's the destination. If the bus is going to Toledo, I don't know why I picked Toledo. Never been to Toledo, I don't think. And I'm not going to Toledo, I will not get on that bus. I'm clear about the destination. You've got to be clear about your destination, where you are taking your prospect. So that's number 2. Transport vehicle is your process. Make sure that it's buttoned up. Make sure that it's visual. We'll talk about that on another one of these live. Number 3, I think there's some inner work to be done. And inner work is just who you are, how you think, how your mind is working. And I have this rule that I say, and you've heard me talk about it before if you've seen or heard any of my podcasts or videos, and it's the idea of detachment. I want you to be detached from the outcome. Detached from the outcome. Now, you'd say, well, wait a minute. I've got goals to meet. I've got retirement to fund. I've got households to support. Yeah, but that's not their problem. That's your problem. Their problem is what's going to pay you to solve your problem. The better you can get at understanding the pain and the problems that exist in their life, and sometimes those are not on the surface. Sometimes you have to dig deep for those. The better you are at that, the more likely they are to do business with you. So the inner issue is key, because you don't want to create the environment where you're pitching and persuading and convincing. I hear this all the time. I listen to calls when people first start joining our groups, or when I'm doing my corporate training, or I'll watch Zoom. It's nice now because you can watch Zoom calls kind of in the background. And it's amazing to me the biggest mistake salespeople make is they pitch too early. They pitch too early. They can't wait to get to the pitch and to talk about how great you are. They don't care how great you are. They care about, do you have a solution to this pain that I'm experiencing? And does it make economic sense to make the move and to engage? So detach from the outcomes, bring unbiased content to them. The instant you start to pitch and present, what happens? What happens when you pitch? If you're a sales leader listening to this, watching this, and you go listen to your people, I will almost promise you they pitch too soon. They pitch too soon, especially in B2B where the sales is more complex. Number 4, pay no attention to your funnel or to your pipeline. I know it's tempting. You get a call, maybe it's a referral from someone, and they say, hey, go call on Carol Smith at Smith Enterprises, and you go over there, you have the first meeting, and you start to think about, oh, okay, I think we can, I need $200,000 in the funnel. I think this would be a good prospect. I can go back to my manager and say, hey, I think I got one in the funnel. No, pay no attention to your funnel. It clutters your mind. It enslaves you. And I know you leaders, and your leader will say, oh, no, the funnel is our business. We got to have a good, strong. I know. I got that. Don't tell them. How about that? Don't tell them that you're talking to Carol Smith. Was that her name? Carol Smith? Don't tell them you're talking to Carol Smith until you are clear that she has a problem worth solving, which might not come in the first meeting. So I want you to be crystal clear about the problem, pay no attention to your funnel. It's what's in it for them, not what's in it for you. I know it's tempting because you're all in business to make money and make the sale and make friends. I understand. And you love working with people and you love solving problems. I got that. But pay no attention to the funnel. It will clutter your mind up. Number 5, ask your questions. I know you all have questions that you ask typically in the sales process. That's cool. There are 2 types of questions, 2 types of answers to your questions: intellectual and emotional. Some questions will get intellectual answers. Like if I said to you, well, how many salespeople do you have on your team? You will say 10 if you're a VP of sales. That's an intellectual question. That does nothing to help me find the problem. Now, you may have a question after that you ask. A good emotional question is, as you look at the next couple of years in your business, what are a couple of roadblocks that you think will present themselves? What are some headwinds that you have in your business that will kind of get in your way of solving your problems? They might say, well, number 1, I can't find good people. And number 2, good people come and go and I can't hang on to people. Well, what happens when you lose people? Well, then I can't find new ones. And then the territory goes unearthed. And then we lose. We had a person last year left and we lost $1 million because he took it with him when he left or whatever. That's emotion. So make sure that your questions that you ask are both intellectual in nature and emotional. You've got to ask some intellectual questions because you want to know if they're a prospect. If VP of sales says, I got 1 person, I might say you're not a prospect for me. So it matters more rather than the questions. And I'm all for having a bank of questions. I think you should. But what I'm more concerned with is you developing the inner curiosity to really focus. When I talk to $1 million producers and people who are really at the top of their game and the top 10% of income earners, I'm always interested in how they see the world. And they are very focused on problem solving, problem finding, and problem solving. Typically, the $1 million person is not pitching too soon. They may even pitch too late because they want to get super clear, hyper clear. I like the word hyper better than super. Hyper clear on what problem are they asking me to solve? Because if you don't get that right, then you come in with a solution and they say, yeah, that's really good. You know what? I think we're just going to wait, Bob. I think we're going to wait a couple months. And I'm guilty of this. We're all guilty of it, where we stop 3 feet short of understanding the real problem. One option on that is to do an assessment. I've got a client in my 2X coaching group, which is a small group coaching practice for salespeople. He has developed an 11 by 17 folded document that's got a nice cover page. And inside the front cover are the 10 questions that he needs to know what the answers are to. And so when he has a Zoom call or a digital call or a phone call or face-to-face, he just pulls that out and that becomes the case file. And so he can jot notes, and it's a reminder for him of what questions to ask. Plus, the prospect sees that and says, oh, well, this person is caring enough to take notes. They have a process. They have a system for problem identification. If you're just winging it and not taking notes and don't have anything that reminds you, if you're like me, I'll forget questions. I'll just forget them. And the questions that we forget are always the most important ones because they're probably the most uncomfortable to ask. Like, how much money is this costing you to have this problem, my friend? How much is it costing you? If you forget that question, now the prospect's going to be comparing your price to doing nothing because there's no cost of the problem. There's no denomination of it. So make sure that you have, and if it could be a one sheet, could be 11 by 17, whatever it is, make sure you have your own little assessment. You don't have to charge for it, although you could. I've got one client in the 2X group that charges now for his assessment, and he actually gives back to the prospect a list of what he finds and what the recommendation solution is. And he says up front when he does the assessment, look, you may decide not to work with me. That's okay. Go through the process, go through this assessment, then you can decide. I'm not going to pitch you. You'll decide at the process whether you think. He says he closes 80% of those. And I believe he does. He's closed 80% of those. Now he's only done probably 10, but 8 out of 10 still beats his old percentage, which was 15%. Okay, so I hope that helps. Any comments? I will ask here. Okay, don't see any. That's okay. I don't take offense to that. I figured, if you don't have any questions, I've explained it so well. We're going to be doing these every day for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and it's all a part of our lead up to some things that we're going to be inviting you to. I'm going to be doing a series of webinars near the middle of March on lead generation and some other things you can do to generate more interest and more discussions. So I hope you've enjoyed today. Thanks for attending, and I will see you later. We'll talk again. We'll be live Monday. Don't forget, probably set 4 o'clock in your calendar for that. I'm pretty sure that's Monday's calendar. All right. See y'all later. Bye.